Hello, everyone. This is Jeanette Shaliga with VGA. Thank you so much for being here to celebrate VGA's 5th birthday. And our next speaker is Eleanor Brinsko, and she's going to be sharing sifting through the cookbooks to find our female ancestors. And so thank you so much, Eleanor, for doing this and sharing your knowledge with us. And the time is all yours.
Thank you, VG. Happy 5th birthday already. I can't believe we're already turning 5. So today we are doing a truncated, shortened version of a longer presentation that I give. And with this particular point of the presentation, we are going to be focusing on the genealogy side of this. I start my usual presentation with the historic context, and I've actually done this with a friend of mine who really specializes in cookbooks on American history. But we're going to be focusing on genealogy because that's why we are here. If you have questions in the future, please feel free to contact me through these different ways. So we're going to be talking about the different types of books, of resources, of websites that you can find your ancestors in, as well as how you can pass on the recipes for future generations. What could that look like? What can you wrap that all up in? Female ancestors are hard to find because more times than not, especially the farther back you go, they are Mrs. Nicholas Brinsko. They're not Eleanor Brinsko. They are Mrs. Husband. And so the cookbooks typically have been in the female domain. That is their area of expertise. And so that's where they're going to be finding their names. So let's talk about the different types of community published cookbooks. This is my cookbook shelf. This is what it looks like upstairs. And I'm a librarian and I have it organized in a particular way. So it's really easy for me to grab and go. If you look a little bit closely, these are going to be my different sections. I have Scandinavian background. I'm 50% Scandinavian. So I have my Scandinavian cookbook section here. Then I'm originally from Minnesota. And so I have my Minnesota cookbooks here. And then I love Food Network. And so I have my Food Network cookbooks right over here. There are a couple of things I want to point out, being kind of library nerdy for you for a second. First of all, don't do what I do. Don't shove little things in between pages so that you can bookmark them. Because what happens over time is we have all these pieces of paper crammed in, and then the binding starts to get messed up. So don't do that. I need to go back and fix it. Then I also have these circles down here. These circles are representing the publishers. One place to look for cookbooks, whether it's for looking for your ancestor or looking for a particular type of regional food or ethnic food, look to the historical societies. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 cookbooks from the Minnesota Historical Society here. I even have one over here from the Wisconsin Historical Society. So go ahead and look at these different institutions, not only for the cookbooks, but just as another way to support these institutions. We're going to be taking a look at cookbooks from my grandmother. If you attended my presentation in February, I talked about my black sheep ancestors, and the person who descended from them are my grandma, who passed away in June. That's me with my grandma, and that's her a few years before she passed away. So I inherited her cookbook collection, among other things. And so as I was paging through them, I wanted to see, well, do I need to keep my grandma's cookbooks? What was she interested in? Do I have ancestors in here? Why did she choose these? So we're going to take a little look at her decision making and clues for looking at cookbooks to help you to determine if your ancestors in here, if you want to keep it, and so on. When I'm looking at a cookbook, and I happen to find my ancestor in there, I'm going to go, well, why was my ancestor in here? What connection did my female ancestor or male ancestor have to that organization, to that community? Why? What recipe or recipes do they submit? Do they submit the family favorites? Or do they go, oh, I got to hurry up and submit here, just take one, just randomly fill one out? Were there any accompanying stories that went with the recipes? And are there any fan club members? So friends, associates, and neighbors, or additional relatives. So don't just look for that ancestor. Look through the book to see who else you can collect. So here's one of the books that my grandma got. My grandmother was a thrifter. She loved her garage sales. She loved going to them, and she loved throwing them. So this is a book looking at firsthand that she got this at a garage sale. We do not have any connections to this particular church. So why did she pick it up? What was just calling her to buy this book for 25 cents? As I flipped through it, one of the things that she did in a lot of her books was write in them. As a librarian, that kind of bothers me. You don't write in books. They're supposed to be nice and neat and clean. But she wasn't sticking those pieces of paper in there like I did. So what is the draw? What is the catch? Which way is the best way? But taking a look at what she was drawn to, recipes to try. Did she ever try them? I don't know. But she lists off the different things that she wanted to try. My grandmother was diabetic. However, I'm noticing a lot of sweets here. So I'm really curious about, what maybe these were her good things that she got to try to treat herself with. And then who's Kathy? I don't know. But looking through this book, I'm looking and seeing a couple of different things. I'm looking for the ethnicities and names. I'm looking for ethnicities of recipes. So here we have Sturts, Broberg, Winter, Reinholden, and Larson. So we have Scandinavian, we have some German in here. Okay, so maybe this is representative of the ethnicities in that region that my ancestors were from, if this was a cookbook from where my ancestors were from. I can take a look to see what was an interest to them. So maybe of ethnicity. So Danish, is it talking about the type of dough that's being used, the type of pastry, or is it actually from Denmark? With Larson and Danish, there could be a connection there. This is a church cookbook from a church that I attended. This is called O Taste and See. This is the cover of it. But if I open the book more to go into that title page, now I have an address, I have a website, I have a copyright date. They do have a copyright date on the front, which is really nice. I don't have any ancestors who went here. But as I flip through, one of the things I really loved is that they had notes. They had stories about what made this recipe so special to them that they wanted to submit it. This is my mother's recipe. When she began to gather ingredients, our 6 children's mouths began to water. What a great selling point. It never lasted long. Here's a cooking tip about a KitchenAid dough hook mixer works best to make the dough. This one from Carolyn Lyle. My sister found this recipe and it was an instant hit in our family. It was so moist, it didn't even need butter. And then here, I've been making this since I was a teen and have learned to line the pan with wax paper to make sure it comes out in one piece. Boy, how nice is that they're giving you tips? They're starting to give you a little bit of genealogy. They're giving the first name of the women who are submitting it. If I go a little bit further, I want to point out that I want to look for references to older cookbooks, especially church cookbooks. If they typically have a cookbook coordinating or aligning with a big church anniversary, if they're doing it every 10 years, or if they needed a fundraiser, I want to look for references for those older cookbooks if there were older cookbooks, and then look for the church organizations that were mentioned. Here, cited from the Bristol Lutheran Church Cookbook, 1980, and originally was submitted by this lady. This lady was a fantastic cook, especially with desserts. When Dorcas Circle met at her home, we knew we would have a good treat. Another great selling point. This recipe has been used for wedding showers in my family. My mom, Doris Crawford, there's a connection for you right there. There's some genealogy submitted by the person saying, my mother made this recipe. This was great, and I've been using it for 50 years. Look at that connection. This is not the stuff you're finding on Ancestry.com or online most of the time. And then here, the recipe has been used for the annual Norwegian Specialties food sale held at the church the first Saturday of October. This lady lived, I think she's about 100 years old or pretty close to it. So she's been baking for a really long time. But this was a big annual event that happened at the church. This was a big deal. And so they would sell these church cookbooks at these bake sales saying, hey, if you like this recipe, you go home and make it, you learn it. These are the tips and tricks. This is from the church I grew up in Minnesota. And looking at it from a librarian perspective, there's something wrong with this book. Can you tell what happened? The binding. This is 1982, and they were using comb bindings. And I was working in the library many times. I had to try to figure out how am I going to fix this broken plastic comb binding? What can we do? So this is all together. It's not together, like it's not attached, but it's together. So I have to try to keep all these pieces of paper together in order. Opening up, they list the names right here. I could do a quick fan club scan for this book instead of going page by page by page. And they give it right here, all the ladies who submitted a recipe to the church. Now, fortunately, my other grandma, who I went to church with all the time, submitted 2 recipes. And so I was able to scan for her name and I was able to flip to the pages. I'm also able to pick out some of her fan club. My grandma's friend Fran was one of her best friends. How great is that? So like, oh, if I keep seeing this name, but I don't know the connection, this is a way to problem solve that. Oh, they must have met at church, or they got to hang out together at church. But these are 2 different recipes that my grandma submitted. But it's very interesting how she submitted the recipes. Here, she is very precise about exactly how much of each ingredient you need. Whereas over here, well, sliced potatoes. What kind of potatoes? How many potatoes? Okay, onions. How many onions? What kind of onions? So it's very interesting here to see the differences in trying to interpret what her recipes are going to be. You can make it very exact or, Those were church cookbooks. Another place to look are business cookbooks. Business organizations, maybe there's some union organization cookbooks. My grandma Dottie, the first one we're looking through her cookbooks, found this one at another garage sale. But I had to look at this very closely because her uncles actually worked in the railroads or near the railroads in La Crosse or near La Crosse, Wisconsin. So I started scanning to see if there were any names in here. There weren't, unfortunately. But it's very interesting. We have barbecued turkey and cottontail casserole, 2 rabbits, a can of cream of mushroom soup, an 8-ounce carton of sour cream, and a package of stuffing mix. Here, this looks like a really nice church cookbook or organization cookbook. But the closer you look, the more interesting this became for me. Favorite recipes from Walmart in Chilton, Wisconsin. I have no connections to Chilton, Wisconsin, so my grandma probably picked this up at a garage sale. And I open it up. Oh, they're doing this as a fundraiser. And I scan down here. Okay, it was in 2002. My grandmother keeps writing in books. And one of the things I've learned about my grandma, who dropped out of school in 9th grade, was that her spelling was a little different. And so there's a consistent thing I'm seeing in all these cookbooks that she's writing in, is that there are a number of times where she flips some letters. She uses the wrong words. She doesn't use the right spelling. So here she says rhubarb crunch. Being a teacher, because I was a teacher before I left to do genealogy, I'm noticing, I'm wondering if there's a learning thing here that's happening, maybe a little dyslexia that we didn't know about. But if I flip through here, there are the names of the people who submitted the recipes. Look at that. That is fantastic. So for some job, so they may be a cashier, they may be a stock person, they may be a warehouse person. It might be a short-term temporary job, but they might have submitted a cookbook recipe for some fundraiser that they were putting on. How great is that? Here's another one. I had to look to see if my grandmother bought it at some event or if she bought it at a garage sale. There are 2 prices here. There's a $10 sticker and there's a $1 sticker. So I'm going to guess that she bought this at a garage sale. She wrote on here, bars. Again, flipping through, $89 to Blue Cross cell phone. She was just trying to find some piece of paper to write anything on. It's just the randomest notes, but it gives you an insight into the daily life that she was thinking of. I flipped through here and there's some really cool headings. This is a fundraiser for an artist group. So this is the Basket Makers Breakfasts, Jewelers Sparkling Soups, Mixed Media Main Dishes, Fiber Artist Bread, Weaver Shuttle, Salads and Sides. So they like to have fun. It doesn't have to be very stately. They can make it personalized, make it exciting, make it relevant to them. So here we have buttermilk pancakes, And then we have the favorite pancakes. I don't know who submitted this one, but this person added her name to the buttermilk pancakes. My grandma's husband died in 2019, 2020. And so she started living by herself. She went ahead and wrote and did all the math for us and for herself, how to make this for enough for one person. Good cooking from the old West. So we're looking at some community cookbooks. Now, we have people who moved out to the West, but not in Nevada. So why did she have this cookbook? Well, my grandma loved her Westerns. Oh, she loved her Westerns. So this to me sounds like cowboy to me. This sounds like Westerns to me. So looking at this particular cookbook that she picked up, we have the title here, and it's for Pa Rump in Nevada. And here, the opening pages, it gives the history of the town. So even if your ancestor is not in that regional or that local cookbook, look to see what history was included in here. It also gives an insight into what kind of ingredients that they like to use in that particular region. I flipped to this page, beverages. 3 out of 4 of these recipes are asking for tang. Tang. I was not expecting that, but okay. So if you have some tang to use up, here are 3 recipes to use it up with. And look for the company cookbooks because they want to market their products. They want you to buy that product. So look for contest entries, especially if you have like the Pillsbury Doughboy cook-off, if you have the Pillsbury Kitchen cook-off, the Betty Crocker cook-off. They're looking for recipe ideas that can be included in their cookbooks, and they might list your ancestor's name in there. But it also gives you a hint about what cookbooks or what ingredients your ancestors were using in the kitchen. And look at the date of the book. So here we have Jiffy, Green Giant, Some Made Cookbook, Del Monte, Wonder Bread, and Fritos. How great is that? Different ways to use their ingredients. Colleges. My alma mater is University of Wisconsin River Falls. And so here there are professors who have submitted recipes for the cookbook. And it was published by the Faculty Women's Club in 1988, 2nd edition. So where's the 1st edition? What is different between the two? Here, these are just different recipes submitted by the different professors. I like this one, the Pooh's House Honey Cookies. And they even have honey, HUNNY. Look online. See what's available online. Digital collections. So you can look on Internet Archive. You can look on Library of Congress, where I found a lot of historic cookbooks, and universities. Universities have the money to digitize and house a number of different types of digital collections, including cookbooks. So this is one from the University of Minnesota. I didn't mean to do that. Oh no. Okay. Sorry about that. Places to search for cookbooks. Where can you find these? The basements, your inherited cookbooks, and recipe boxes. Antique stores and thrift stores and eBay. I like to do a search for my ancestral hometowns on eBay just to see what's coming up. And I want to do the same as well for the cookbooks. Historical societies, both the collections and the bookstores, like I had pointed out. The Minnesota Historical Society does have a number of great historic cookbooks for the different regions, the different communities, the different organizations. Libraries, public, university, and special libraries. Those are going to be the more unique, rare kind of artifacts that you can sift through. Ancestral religious communities, local communities, and organizations. Then here are the websites. I do have a handout I can put in the chat for you that lists all these out. Newspapers. Look for those newspapers. Look to see what the different contests are that were happening, that cooks can go ahead and submit their recipes to get a prize. So newspapers.com, Library of Congress's Chronicling America, a historical society, if they have a digital newspaper database on their website, Internet Archive. When you go to Library of Congress, type in loc.gov and search for cookbook. You'll get pages and pages of results. There are a couple more on UW Library's research guide on cookbooks, culinary arts, and culinary history. Now, you might not have any connection to Wisconsin, but just do a broad search and don't be afraid to click. If you're doing a broad search on Google and you type in cookbooks, research guide, see what comes up. You never know what's going to happen, what might come up that's going to be relevant to you. And then there are blogs that are all over the place. So then how to research your female ancestors? If you're looking in newspapers, you'll likely be found in the cooking section or society section of newspapers. And all you do is you go like newspapers.com, you type in recipe, and you can limit it by whatever geographic region you'd like. And these recipes can be accompanied by background information, and they can be published posthumously. Here from Winona Daily News in Minnesota, December 10th, 1946, the late Mrs. William New. She submitted this recipe, or somebody submitted it for her, I should say. And many of Mrs. New's recipes came from the home cookbook compiled by the ladies of Toronto and the chief cities and towns of Canada in 1877. What connection would Mrs. New have to Canada? That's a lead for you. The Christmas cookies of Mrs. C.S. Peterson recipe for Fatima and Bakels, a traditional Norwegian cookie. She was born in Norway and came from that country when she was a young woman. So if you're looking for an ancestry, this is giving you that background information, is bringing life back to that person, which is one of the reasons why we do this anyway. Here from the Minneapolis Star from 1935, we're collecting, they wanted to host a contest. The newspaper was going to publish a cookbook, and they were looking for recipes to have submitted. There are weekly prizes, and within here, you can look up, there'll be 164 pages of tested recipes, advice on the administration of the home, foreign dishes, tables, and tabulations concerning cooking, baking, broiling, canning, and general preparation of the finer foods that will truly make it a wonder cookbook. I now, if my ancestor is in this cookbook, I now need to go find this cookbook. Where would I look? The Minnesota Historical Society. So whatever historical society you would have. These submissions are fantastic. Look at these, because not only do they submit the recipes to the newspaper, the name and the address right there that she filled out. She says, here, I'm here. If they are married, it looks like my assumption is that they would say Mrs. M.H. Peterson. This one is putting her first name. This one is not a Mrs. So I want to look into that a little bit more as well. Is this lady's first name a C, or is her husband's first name a C? And then again, another great place to find a fan club is just flipping through the cookbooks as well. This one was interesting. This is from my husband's side of the family. When I got married to my husband, this is the book that every new woman in the family gets. Our favorite recipes. Okay, so I flipped it open, and it's from a church that my ancestors, or my husband's ancestors, attended and submitted recipes to. Down here, there are 1, 2, 3 copyright dates. So that means that this is the 3rd edition. What's the difference between these different editions? I would like to look. I have a picture of the church. I have who assembled this. Where's this church? And if I'm lucky, these are handwritten recipes. They are handwritten recipes with the signatures. That is awesome. That is so cool. So take the time to sift through these cookbooks to find your ancestors and what information can come with them. Also, they might go by Mrs. Alex or just by the first name. So look for both names. Keep a list about the different names and aliases that your female ancestor could be under. Then to quickly kind of start wrapping this up here, this is from my grandma Addie, the one with the sliced onions and potatoes. This was in the recipe box that I inherited from her. Who's Lorraine Hannon? I knew the name, but I really didn't know the connection. So I went ahead and I did an ancestry search for her, and I found her yearbook picture on there. And you've probably done that too, trying to find the different yearbook pictures. But I needed to know how they knew each other, because I didn't know. I know the names, but I didn't know how they were connected. West High School Yearbook, 1946, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, 1946, Minneapolis. Hey, my grandma graduated in 1946 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That must be a high school connection. No, I had to slow my roll West High School. That was not the high school my grandma went to. She went to Roosevelt High School. So then I want to look at that next layer, and it was a college connection. But again, looking for that fan club, seeing what's happening. Finally, creating your own genealogical cookbook and recipe collection. Something to consider. Write the history of the recipe. Write your notes and helpful hints. Write your memories of this recipe. What good memories are you wanting to hold on and pass on? Otherwise, why would you include a recipe that you don't like? Why would you include this if you're going to pass this on for your family genealogy cookbook? Maybe it was important to another family member. Maybe it was important to a parent. Write your recipe so future generations can read it and be able to replicate it. If you have sloppy handwriting, type it out. If you want to make sure that everything is nice and uniform, well, choose which way you want to go. If you want to have everything typewritten, or if you want everything handwritten so that they have grandma or grandpa's handwriting. Include pictures with captions. If you have a picture on here, that's great. But who is it? Why did you put this picture here? Is it a nice looking picture? So have it with the captions and who owns that photo right now. And then make sure to include your favorite recipes. At my bridal shower, my husband's family gave me their favorite family recipes. And so here, originally Grandpa Greg's recipe, submitted or adapted by Catherine. I know who that is, but my great grandkids are not going to know who that is. So I need to make a note on here explaining which Grandpa Greg that we're talking about, who Catherine is. So kind of limit that and make less work for them. And then I already know Betty Daniels. That's one of my husband's aunts. My husband has like 8 aunts, more than that. So I can keep track of them all. It's going to be harder for future generations too. Then I had another bridal shower in Minnesota. And this is what my grandpa's cousin gave me. Look at this. It was just a printout. She gave a great explanation, a little history about who she was, why this was the recipe that she gave. And then she gave her own address right there. It should be Rochester, not Rochester. But this is Rochester. So she gives a picture of her mother, and she gives a little history, the recipe, and the address. Fantastic. So things to keep in mind if you start putting together your own cookbook. This one, I got to go quick. We have Merck's coffee cake. I had no idea where I got this from. I got a lot of recipes given to me over the years, but I finally was able to talk about it with just different family members to kind of trace this back. And this was given to me by my mother-in-law. It's not her handwriting, so I got to figure out, well, how did she get this? But I was able to make a note, able to cite that source about how I got it. Then here's a recipe from my mother. Before I moved to graduate school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I asked my mom, can you please give me recipes, your favorite recipes, so I can go make them on my own? And she goes, okay. And so at first she's taking her time and writing it out very nicely, but then, just write. Her hand was getting tired and she was losing focus. She just wanted to get it done with. And so she started to write really quickly. I understand how to make this. I had to write my own notes on here so that future generations would know it. I had to write directions. And then she flipped it over quick. But then I decided to make my own variation of it. And so I added this in pencil. So when I make my genealogy cookbook for future generations, I'm going to include both versions of this. Grandma Greg, here again. So Grandma Greg and Grandpa Greg, they were married. And so this gives me a hint that both the husband and wife were cooks of the family. If you want to put this together, you can have your own little recipe box. You can actually make a commercially printed book with pictures. It's all typed out. You can make multiple copies of it using Shutterfly or Mixbook. They are great companies to work with. They're easy to put together. You can choose hardbound or soft cover, paperback cover, your choice. A recipe box would be great. Here's the problem with my recipe box that I got for my wedding present, is that Lorraine Hannon's recipe, the one from the college friend of my grandma's, the problem is her card that she had it on was too big for the recipe box. So right now it's tipped 90 degrees, so it doesn't fit. A 3-ring binder. I love 3-ring binders. I'm a genealogist. Of course I love my 3-ring binders, but One of the best things about that is that I can put the recipes in sheet protectors. I can make them as Xerox copies, put them in the sheet protectors, and then I can change the order of them. However, I can change the order of them, and so can somebody else. And so it'd be easy to edit, but it'd be easy also to lose those pieces of paper. And then also food blogging and videos. This is my husband's cousin Kathy, and she, for her career, she has a food blog that has millions of followers in it. And one post she had was about her grandmother, their shared grandmother, and it talks about how she found her grandma's diary, and she made it this particular cake for her own birthday. And so, looking at that, boom! I just got another family story. I got a family recipe just by looking at a blog. But that said, thank you all so much for joining me today. If you have future questions, please let me know. I'm going to put the handout in the chat, and thank you all so much.